doing this Kirby YouTuber thing. On the one hand, Kirby. On the other hand, breadcrumbs. And I get to share in the joy and wonders of what I love most about Kirby with everyone. That is, of course, Kirby speedrunning. Let's see what kind of wonderful comments I get from my wonderful Fluffle fans. Let's try narrowing this down. Maybe filter by not the super creepy comments. There we go. Lots of insightful commentary from the YouTube comments. Let's see what these are about. Okay, so I'll be honest, the overwhelming majority of the comments I get on this channel are very positive. I love reading and interacting with the comments, seeing what people think of my videos, how they respond to learning the really cool ins and outs of Kirby games. But there is a style of comment that I've been getting for years, one that I sort of try to address whenever I can, but is so long overdue to have a more detailed explanation. As you can figure, that is, why do I focus so much on speedrunning with Kirby? And why do I say an ability is good or bad based purely on how it performs in speedruns? First off, it should be said, the people who ask because they genuinely want to know why speedrunning is the metric that I use, you guys rock. I've got no beef with you, and I love how willing you are to learn about stuff like this. On the same side of the same coin, for those who really like abilities that don't hold up so well and are kind of bummed out when their favorites aren't that good, you guys rock too. And I have to add, unless you're actually looking to get optimal, don't feel bad about playing with your favorites. Have the fun time you deserve to have. As for the jerks on the other side of this coin who leave condescending comments about everything, well, you guys can buckle in too, I guess. I don't necessarily like getting those kinds of comments, but hey, you know, something, all engagement is good engagement, right? With all of that out of the way, the actual answer, wow, I'm getting to my point, finally, crazy, is not so simple. I mean, okay, I guess it kind of is, and now I'm a liar, and you're gonna put me on wanted posters? But I want to go in as much detail as I can with this, because I get asked why I focus so much on speedrunning a lot. And I want to make this answer super detailed so that I can just link to this video when I get asked the question. So, okay, why do we actually need to use speedrunning for this metric? I shall answer this question with another question. That one being, what is Kirby? It's a very loaded question, so I will answer that for you. It's a single-player game. In a multiplayer game, it's pretty simple to judge what's best and what isn't. Whatever has the highest odds of helping you win and, I don't know, that person over there lose is the best. This still tends to not really work out and cause lots of arguments, but at the very least, the idea of this helps make my opponent lose so it's good is universally agreed upon. And I swear, if I see even one comment saying, but I like to lose, then I'll be happy because you left a comment for me. Thank you. All jokes aside, since Kirby is a single-player game, we need to look at things from a different angle. If we can't beat our opponents, what can we beat? The obvious answer here is you can beat the game. Yep. With that in mind, the next question to ask is, what is the most efficient way to beat a single-player game? And the fun answer there is that, well, it depends on the game. There are so many different ways that you can play single-player games that it almost feels like the sky is the limit. The game is your oyster, and there's some other third thing. I don't know. You've probably figured out at this point, at least for Kirby, I've come to the logical conclusion that big words make me sound smart, and that speedrunning is the best metric to judge optimal play by. But again, why? Let's explain with an example, the most straightforward of them all. In Kirby's Return to Dreamland, as well as Deluxe, there is no arguing that the best ability in the game is Wing. Incredible movement, insane invincibility, strong attacks, deals with bosses very well. It even has the best vertical movement speed, beating out other pretty decent options like Tornado, High Jump, and in Deluxe, Mecha. But this is just factoring speed on the best ability into account. What if we were to look at, say, Sword? Oh yeah! You knew it was coming. It's Sword Slayer time! Yeah! Ow! Sword also has an invincible dash attack, a strong damaging option in its charged spin attack, can fire a full screen beam at full health, gets a defensive spin attack in the air. In general, it's got pretty decent defensive options, and at the end of the day, that's a Zelda reference. Wowzers. So how could I ever imagine Wing being better than Sword? Is it because it's faster? Yes. Well, that's partially why Wing is, let's get real here, way better. Let's break this down. Both of these have invincible dash attacks, this much is true. But Sword's is very limited. It can only be used on the ground, for one. It's overall pretty weak in terms of the damage it does deal, and if you use it near a ledge, it just kind of goes, You can combo into the up slash and a down slash if you're feeling spunky, but it leaves you wide open for damage if that doesn't kill, and the damage itself is fine, I guess. Your charged spin slash is definitely better. Wing, on the other hand, has that invincibility. It can be used in the air, which is crucial for keeping up the pace. It does more damage than a dash attack realistically needs to do, since you only really need a dash attack to, dash and attack. I'm a genius. It also has pretty solid range for making sure enemies stay out of your way. It can be comboed into its down B, or one if you're a wheel elitist. Wheel elitist, if you will. To keep the pace going when you move down, Wing's wing flap, replacing float, also ensures you can keep the speed going while you're moving up. And oh, by the way, did I mention you don't need to land before using it again in the air? When we compare the rest of what we talked about, we can reach the same conclusions here. Sword having a strong spin attack is really only good for beating bosses, and they have to be on the ground because that's the only place that it hits, and oh hey, what do you know, quickly! But using options like Wing's down B and canceling that into a float, then repeating the process, is much faster. About the only perk the spin attack really has is that it's easier, but we're not looking at ease of use. We're being optimal! Sword having a full screen projectile is, funny, I guess. But you need to be at full health to use it, and not to mention, you're standing in one spot when you are attacking with it. You may as well just nudge forward a little bit and go swing to hit enemies from ever so slightly closer. Oh no! Defense is a whole topic that I want to talk about later. Too long don't read or TLDR. Wow, we're really shortening everything here. Defense straight up doesn't matter. But to humor this argument for now, all I'll say is that while Wing is an offensive menace, its defense holds up pretty well too. Of course, Wing and Sword aren't the only two abilities in the game, and despite the consistency and efficiency of my Sword slander, I wouldn't even argue anymore that Sword is that bad of an ability. It's not great, but not bad either. Comparing Wing to a much better ability like Tornado or Hammer is still gonna get you the exact same results. Wing is the best because it has the easiest and fastest time consistently triumphing over this game. And to keep looking at the same side of this gosh diddly darn coin, Wing isn't the only good ability in the game. It's the best for sure, but I'm not crazy enough to say it's the only good one. I mentioned Tornado and Hammer before, but there are others. There's Fire, there's Parasol, there's Water. Just 5 right there. That's good. And if you want to compare Wing to an ability that's worse than Sword, oh, so help you. This isn't just a matter of speed when talking about what's optimal. You need to factor in just about everything, weigh what's truly important for beating a game, and abuse the heck out of the actual good stuff. It just so happens that, oh, hey, golly, good gosh, what do you know? Speed, thus speedrunning, winds up being the most important factor. Not only for the reasons I already listed, but to what they actually amount to. With everything that makes Sword unique, you need to deal with every obstacle the game throws at you, whether it's prepared to or not. Wing is so good at everything and has a kit that's so well equipped to deal with the dangers that Kirby has to face, it can straight up move past a lot of the challenges that the game throws at it, doing so much better than every other ability. And yeah, this may sound boring, the most optimal way to play a game is to ensure the other side doesn't get to do anything. But this is how you do anything. Optimal! It's straight up easier and far more efficient to learn how to bypass a challenge than it is to face it head on. In many other single player games, not to mention every multiplayer game ever, abide by this philosophy, not just Kirby. The hard numbers all come together to prove that Wing is the best. And for what it's worth, I think Kirby manages to be much cooler in this regard compared to a lot of other games, since something like Wing has so many options that you can use to win the day. New improvements for this stuff get discovered a lot more than you'd expect. That said, we've spent a long time using Wing as an example, but while it's the easiest to explain and understand, this applies to every single top tier ability in the series. Jet and Superstar and Ultra, Wheel and Squeak Squad, Tornado and Adventure, Fire and Triple Deluxe, they all boil down to the exact same ideas. They're all better than your other options because they're the best at mitigating the challenges the game throws at you, either by ignoring them entirely or by dealing with them so quickly and efficiently that the game doesn't have time to let them be challenging. And yes, this is why defensive play simply doesn't work when you're evaluating stuff like this. Standing around and giving the game opportunities to beat you down is far worse than solving the problem and moving on. Defensive play is good for things like a blind playthrough, sure, but again, we're talking efficiency here. Blazing through, say, Kirby's Dream Land 3 with Ku is way better than with the newer flying buddy, Pitch. Ku is much faster, with abilities that are designed around keeping up your movement, while also being strong and safe enough to where things like boss fights aren't that much of a problem. Pitch, on the other hand, trades speed and freedom for defense and ease of use. And as I've yapped about for too long, maybe, I don't know, I guess we'll see how the video winds up doing, what Ku offers is way better than what Pitch offers. This is, by far, where I hear about Mirror the most. A lot of people try to tell me that Mirror is this really good ability that I'm not giving the defensive merits that it deserves to. Cause hey, listen, the guard, it nullifies damage. The shield works as a reflector. Its dash attack makes it super hard to get hit. And Mirror does good damage to bosses considering it's such a defensive ability. Sadly, that last point is just wrong. We know what abilities are best versus bosses because we have the hard numbers to back it up. Mirror does not do that well. I mean, yeah, sure, I guess Mirror's guard nullifies all damage, but the guard nullifies most damage on every ability anyway. The damage you do wind up taking also winds up being microscopic. If you're at a point where Mirror's guard and nullifying damage actually matters, I think you should put down Kirby for a little while and go to the lottery because those odds are very rare. And while I'll also admit that it's not easy to get hit during Mirror's dash attack, this is another case of where name me a dash attack that doesn't apply to. As for the whole thing about Mirror reflecting, it's technically correct, I guess. I mean, you're not wrong, it does reflect, but it accomplishes so little that I never really think to ever bring it up. I always saw it as a fun tool for a casual time at best, that I was really surprised when so many people mentioned this extremely niche tool as a reason for why Mirror is super good. I'm actually gonna go Angie a pup on this one, for real. No, this is not a good tool. At best, it's fun. At worst, it's way too inconsistent to even have something fire a projectile for you to reflect to begin with to make it useful. And in all code cubes run of Planet Robobot, it's used to get a code cube you're forced to use Mirror to get, and that is the current extent of Mirror's Reflect being used. And I don't know, to me, I am forced to use it. Sounds a lot heckin' worse than is good. All of this having been said, I do always make it a point to evaluate abilities in Kirby by their usage in 3 different speedy categories. And any percent speedrun, where your only goal is to get from start to finish, 100% where your goal is to finish a game in its entirety, and the boss rushes, typically arenas where all that matters is how well an ability can beat the bosses. All 3 of these are not only constants in every single main Kirby with abilities, heck, they even apply to most of the spin-offs with abilities too, let's be real, but it also opens the door for far more variety. I'm not about to say Wing is the only good ability in Return to Dreamland, like I said before, nor would I say just beating the game and nothing else is the only important metric to look at. Gotta be crazy, and not to mention way less fun. And at the end of the day, speedrunning and Kirby, very fun. Speedrunning Kirby specifically, even more fun. Oh, and you know, some Kirby games have modes where you get timed, and I don't know, having the fastest time for the modes that time you, that's pretty epic, I guess. I think. So that about wraps up the basics, just the basics. I'm a very good yapper, don't you worry, on why speedrunning is such an important metric for how good an ability is. But I expect there to be a lot more questions and counterpoints to my points, so I'll try to address as many as I can, at least based off of comments I've already gotten in the past. By far, the most common complaint that I hear when I talk about speedrunning is that I should also be taking casual gaming into account. Jet in, say, Superstar Ultra may be the best, but for a casual playthrough, it's not good at all. What about, say, Fighter? That's a fun ability. I like that in my casual playthrough. I truly think these comments come from a good place, and the people leaving them are just trying to get their point across that speedrunning isn't the only way to play Kirby games. I never said that it was, but I can understand getting defensive over a person yapping about my favorite ability and them saying that it's not great for too many minutes. The problem with this argument is that, for reasons that I already explained, because I am optimal, this doesn't work when talking about efficient play. Casual play, for all the fun that it can offer, is about as inefficient as you can get. And I'm going to stress, there's nothing wrong with playing casually. I play Kirby and most other games casually too, more than I play efficiently even, as do most people. For Kirby especially, I'd be really surprised if more than like, I don't know, 0.1% of the player base really knew enough about the games to play them optimally, and that's fine. But it's not efficient. Kirby games consistently give you way too many insane tools with insane mobility, strength, and mobility and strength at the same time for any kind of casual playthrough to really be efficient here. I hear a lot that Tornado and Squeak Squad is really good, and that people can beat the bosses in that game using Tornado pretty easily. And granted, I have underrated that ability in the past because I wanted to show that Squeak Squad has better options than Tornado, but the fact stands, there are better options in Kirby Squeak Squad than Tornado. Wheel, hammer, sword, fire, cutter, they're all better than Tornado. In some cases for the levels, in some cases for the bosses, in some cases both. Ease of use is something that I hear a lot of people talk about when arguing for defense of casual play. Or at the very least, it should be something that's factored into my criteria for what's optimal. Like I said, Tornado and Squeak Squad, the obvious example here, but stuff like Ranger in Forgotten Land, Spark plus Ice and Kirby 64, that's the fridge that spits out the food for those of you who aren't humiliatingly deep into this stuff like I am. Or one that I've heard like a frightening amount of times, people think Artist in Star Allies is easy to use. See, I've always found Artist super clunky and difficult to get a good handle on. It feels too stiff to me, like I am forced to stand in one spot when I'm using it, compared to other abilities that give me more control over what I want to do and where I go while using them. And while I can say something like, boom, boom, bingo, babish, that right there is why casual gaming cannot be used for any kind of talk about efficiency. Yahoo! Can you tell that's what I typed in the script before I remembered whoopsie doopsie, I was actually talking about another point. I'll stay on topic and say that ease of use specifically doesn't work because what's easy for one person isn't always easy for another. I think Circus in games like Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot, an ability that isn't even very good, is really fun and quite flexible. And while I've heard that many people agree with me, I've also learned that a lot of people don't. There are countless examples like this, but to actually bring it back to casual gaming and why I can't use that as a metric, look at me, we'll put these points together. Casual gaming is all about one's own experiences and how the opinions they formed playing a game applies to them. And of course, it's very personal. I would never take that away from anyone. But that's the thing, it's you. Just you. People are out there who will agree with you in broader strokes, absolutely, but getting down to the specifics just doesn't work well for talking about what's good and what's bad. Just one's own favorites and least favorites. Look, 99% of the time, Parasol is my baby, and if it was up to me, I'd just inject it into my veins, but I can admit that in a game like Planet Robobot, which is a Parasol that I love in one of my favorite video games of all time, it's a bad ability. It just is. The Robobot's not the only one, and it's probably not even Parasol at its worst, but is the most extreme case for my point. This is another epic counter to that whole mirror dash attack shindig that I was talking about before. Wait, my points loop around to make effective arguments? That's crazy! This logic also winds up applying to many different kinds of comments that I see. Most people don't speedrun, so why should it matter? For example, first, that's actually rude. Cries in the corner. But that doesn't change anything about efficiency. That just means that nothing should matter except for popularity, which is like a really depressing way of going about life, to say the very least. Not to mention, sleep specifically is one of the most popular abilities in the series, and saying that's better than anything is interesting, to say the very least. I also hear, but what about the fun factor? What if I just want to have fun? It's another well-meaning comment, but not only is Kirby speedrunning actually tons of fun, that's another opinionated point. I always personally light up when I get comments for top-tier abilities, especially Jet, that are along the lines of, I always thought this ability was super fun, but I never knew it was good. It really reinforces all of the points that I make, and makes me feel like a little fuzzies, you know? And while I'm not gonna address every single argument that I've gotten, for example, I'll just say that for some reason I get comments along the lines of, speedrunners are elitist, we should ignore speedrunning. I'm just gonna move on. But there is one point that I want to address, that being Kirby games aren't designed to be speedrun. Since they're not made that way, why should we even bother judging abilities like this? This isn't like Sonic the Hedgehog or something, right? And despite what some of you may be thinking, this isn't actually that bad of an argument. Well, it wouldn't be if it wasn't completely wrong, of course, but given the nature of Kirby games, you would expect the dev teams to not really care about this kind of thing. But it's really clear that the devs really care about this kind of thing. As far back as Kirby Superstar, you got modes like the Arena and Revenge of Meta Knight that had an in-game timer, slowly ticking down, or up in Romka's case. Ticking up sounds really weird, urging players to try and clear the modes as fast as they can. Now, this only got more prevalent with all future boss rushes, or modes like Meta Nightmare, Guest Star Allies, etc. Kirby games are made to be accessible to everyone, yes, but it's clear that all of the different Kirby devs out there really care about the small portions of the player base that want to play efficiently. Which, you know, is fast. Yep. And that's just the argument of using in-game timer. There's stuff like Sakurai outright saying he wanted to add stuff in his games, even KDL1, Kirby Dream Land, that appeal to more than just the casual gamer. There is giving various abilities different buffs and nerfs over the years that result in different abilities being good and bad throughout different parts of different games. Or, heck, even about just how speedrunning tech throughout the years has basically, I don't know, never been removed. Rip and pepperoni, ESP skip from Star Allies. You left this world too soon. But Star Allies never patched out, say, the air bomb spam or Sizzle Shuttle Loop Meta Knight, two of the most broken abilities that the series has ever seen. Heck, Forgotten Land has things like Hammer Super Jump that allows for Crash to be used in all of the Ultimate Cups, and the Meta Knight Cup too. I don't like the naming here, it's annoying, cries in the corner, and that game never got patched once. There is also the change from Triple Deluxe to Planet Robobot that removed all boss invincibility, completely shaking up the boss rush meta on its head, and allowing Ice to be the best ability in the game for bosses in Planet Robobot. I could go on, they've given me an endless treasure trove of examples here over the years, but these are very intentional changes that are absolutely made for the speedrunning crowd. And, you know, everyone else, because this doesn't actually change anything about a casual playthrough, and the games are designed for everyone. Abilities having good speedrun options changes quite literally nothing for a casual playthrough, but we kinda already talked about that, and I kinda sorta don't want to upset any more people than I already have. Whoops. Before wrapping up though, there is one last final point I've surprisingly only heard a few people bring up before. I hear a lot of people say that I should use casual gaming as a metric, but rarely have I heard, I don't know, why not use challenge runs as your metric? Why not damageless runs? Maybe some extreme Kaizo-style ROM hack that really forces you to play at your best. These may be different from speedrunning, sure, but they all enforce some level of optimization, right? I've thought about this to myself a lot over the years, mostly since, to me at least, it's the best counterpoint out of anything that I've heard, but it still doesn't work. It flies high, mind you, just not high enough. The problem with all of these more optimal styles of play, minus speedrunning, of course, is that there aren't any hard numbers to back them up. You simply can't have an objective metric for stuff like this. For example, say you do a damageless run of Kirby Dream Land 2 with only Cutter, then you do another one with only Needle. You find Cutter easier than Needle because it's got a projectile and it's safer versus things like bosses and Scarfies specifically. Someone else shows up and says, well, actually adjusts glasses, I don't have glasses on, pretend I did. Needle is a defensive juggernaut that trivializes levels with patience, makes quicker work of bosses. Look, did you see that? I'm even here, I'm using speedrunning as a metric. It's just meant to be, okay? Thus making them easier, less mistakes, all that jazz. A challenge playthrough runs into the same issues, only with the added caveat of you're intentionally holding yourself back to make something harder. We're talking efficient play here, and intentionally playing worse doesn't really sound efficient to me. As for the Kaizo ROM hack, look, I needed a third argument to bring up, okay? Obviously, having to literally modify a game kind of ruins whatever point that anybody's trying to make. To summarize all of what I've said, I use speedrunning as the objective metric for abilities because it's the only objective metric out there with anything meaningful to add about an ability's value. We may all have our own unique opinions on what makes something good or bad, but at the end of the day, those are opinions. Everyone's gonna have their own opinion, and that's fine, but it's not what I'm trying to explain here. We're here to see what's good, what's bad, and what's in the middle, and the only metric we can use to judge that is speedrunning. That summarizes things quite nicely. Wouldn't that have been a way faster video? There'd be, you know, no context, and people would be crazy confused, but maybe it'd be funny. I don't know. And that's the video! Again, if you enjoyed, please consider supporting the channel with a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's all free, it's all appreciated, and it's all optimal! If you'd like to go the extra mile, please consider becoming a Puptron on Patreon or join as a Mempup on YouTube. You get nifty perks, including early access to all the videos. Special thanks to my head-patting, Fluffle fan Puptrons and Mempups, Freakish Uproar, Lydia Scribe, and Nightfall. I love you all! This may be a very predictable thing to say to you guys, but who cares? You're all awesome! Bye!